I am here because my son, my only child, was poisoned by fentanyl October 26, 2021. Doing this story, doing the work that I do, keeps my son with me. So with the nonprofit that I started, AK Fentanyl Response, I do presentations to pretty much anybody that'll have me about fentanyl poisoning, teach people what fentanyl is, how dangerous it is, how deadly it is, how it's impacting Alaska and the country, and how important it is to reach people to give them the message that any illicit drug likely contains enough fentanyl in it to kill them, to create demand reduction, and with the ultimate goal of people not taking illicit drugs at all. For me, it started with raising awareness and getting naloxone out widely so that people would stay alive. At that time, people did not know that fentanyl was in Alaska. For the most part, people did not know. I did not know. My son did not know. The people that I was talking with in the public did not know. So it was very important to me in the beginning to get naloxone out. So I spent a lot of time training and distributing naloxone. As time has gone on, naloxone has been widely distributed in Alaska, which is great. I always want naloxone to be available to people so that they will stay alive. More important to me now is to get the message that no illegal drug is safe. No illegal drug is safe, and that we have to reduce demand, get people to quit taking illegal drugs to keep them alive. If you never take an illegal drug, you can never die from an illegal drug. You will never need naloxone. So that's my goal now, is to reach people and hopefully get them to recognize the necessity of never taking an illicit drug. So Bruce was born in Alaska in the spring. From day one, even actually from before day one, from in utero, they couldn't catch him. During the ultrasound, they would chase him around with that ultrasound finder to try to get a picture of him. And the people that were doing the ultrasound said, "Oh, you've got your hand full, Mom. This is a mover. This little one's a mover." So he was moving then, and he never stopped moving. He was an adventure seeker from birth. He climbed out of his crib before he could walk. He climbed up the counters. I found him on the counters, kitchen counters, before he could walk. He was climbing. So that stayed with him his whole life. When he was a toddler, I'd take him to parks, just like all mothers take their children to parks, and he would climb up the outside of the play areas, and the other mothers would say, "You need to get him down. You need to get him down. He's going to fall." And I would say to the mothers, I can't get him down. You can try to get him down, but I've given up trying to get him down from things. He never fell. He never got hurt. He started climbing trees early on. We had a tree in the backyard that he would climb and stay in for hours. As he got older, he started looking things up on the internet, and he found gibbons. They're kind of a monkey that swing through trees like Tarzan, and he began teaching himself how to swing through tree branches like a gibbon, and was doing that from tree to tree to tree like a monkey in the jungle when he was very young. He discovered parkour, which is free running, when he was about 10. And we were living in Southern California then, so there were parkour gyms. He started doing parkour in earnest at about 10 or 11. We would drive to LA so that he could go to a free running gym. in Los Angeles. They named moves after him. They called him the Gibbon. That was his nickname at the parkour gym, was Gibbon. And he could do things on bars that the instructors couldn't do. And they were naming moves after him. So the outdoors is where he spent his time. He didn't play video games. He didn't watch very much TV. He wanted to be outside in the woods, in the trees, climbing mountains.
He was like an older brother to me. He's like about a year older than me. And then I also got a little sister. Her name's Maddie. And the three of us would, when we visited him, would just hang out. And, you know, he took care of us. He took care of my sister and I. He lived in California for most of when I was younger. But that was cool because then we got to go to California and go to like Disneyland with him and Legoland. And they had like a pool and a hot tub in the backyard and trees and stuff that he would climb. Bruce was like the most athletic person I've ever met. He could climb anything. He knew how to like skateboard and like bike with no hands. And like, he was just like amazingly athletic.
We came to Alaska on he wanted to come home to Alaska. He was watching a guy that was moving to Alaska on a YouTube channel. And he said, I want to go home. And within a month and a half, we were back in Alaska. He was 13 at the time. So he came back to his true home when he was 13 and discovered rock climbing. So he was rock climbing in Alaska, going to the Alaska Rock Gym was his passion, was rock climbing in the woods, mountaineering. He went to the National Outdoor Leadership School for a month and a half in Alaska, which they left and didn't come back for a month and a half. And he lived in the woods with them, summited mountains, explored Alaska, and he learned how to be an outdoor climbing guide. And that was his dream, to be an outdoor climbing guide. And he passed and was certified to do that when he was 17 years old.
Sandy let him be very adventurous because that's what he loved. And he was good at it. Since he was a little tiny boy, he had very excellent hand-eye coordination and could ride a razor scooter at 3 years old and avoid humans, and always very, very agile.
He was this vibrant, love the outdoors, all boy, loved hiking and walking the wilderness and everything like that. He just that kid was one with nature. He had a real vibrancy to him.
He went on knolls hiking through the world and can do backflips off rocks. And the counselor said, we see that you can do that, but it's not a good training for other people. Most people would die doing that.
When he was 17 years old, he had his wisdom teeth removed, like most 17-year-olds. He came home from the dentist with a prescription for oxycodone. My baby was in pain, and I gave him those pills. I gave him the oxycodone as prescribed by a doctor, but something happened in him with those oxys. We have history of substance abuse on both sides of our family. He knew that, and I had warned him for his whole life that he was in danger of having a substance abuse disorder. But I didn't think about those oxycodone pills. I just knew my child was in pain, and I gave them to him. When he was 17, he changed who he was. I never had that. I never had my baby back after that. It kicked something in him that created a person I didn't know. So he began in earnest using illegal substances at that time, after those oxys were gone. I had to move schools. We had to change schools because there was a house near the school he was attending that they were using drugs in that house. I told the school they were using drugs in that house because he told me about the house. The school didn't do anything. So I took him out of that school and began homeschooling him. His teacher was his rock climbing coach at the Alaska Rock Gym. So I thought, we dodged the bullet, that he was back at the rock gym. He was climbing. He was working with his coach. His coach was his high school teacher. But he kept using drugs. It became very clear when he was 19 that he had a serious substance abuse disorder. And he started getting arrested for doing things that were illegal when he was under the influence. He was stealing liquor from the liquor store. I don't know if he was drinking it or if he was trading it for drugs, but he started shoplifting liquor and getting arrested for that and going to jail. By the time he was 21, he had numbers of times been in jail for that. And he was using hard drugs. And I knew that. And he was unrecognizable. He was unrecognizable to me and the rest of our family. He wasn't safe to be around anymore. He became violent with me. He was destructive in our home. So I couldn't have him living at home with me anymore. So he was living on the street by 19. I would say to him, Bruce, when you're ready to do something different, let me know, and we'll do something different.
We weren't really told what was going on because I was taking at that time like crazy AP classes and like college classes as a senior, and I was just burying my head in work. And so my mom didn't really want to stress us out, but we knew that he wasn't in the house, or he'd be out, or he'd be in the ER.
It was devastating. He would go out, not come back for a day or two, and and he had such a sweet, good nature to him. Kid never had a mean bone in his body, and just to see his life just get scuttled in his teen years, by the scourge of drugs, it just, is heart-rending. And, the helplessness to watch this happen to a beloved family member is really, really, really hard. The addiction and the very difficult paths to any kind of recovery are just, and especially at that age where they're in their late teens and you're just starting to see who they are, who they're going to become. You get that glimpse of this is what this future adult's going to be about. And to see that just get taken away is heartbreaking.
I saw a change when he started using hard drugs. It scared me. I was a partier, but I saw that it was a different situation. And he said, "Oh yeah, those drug dealers, they're my friends." I said, "They're not your friends. They're not your friends, Brucey. We're your friends." So I knew that was dangerous for him to think that. That scared me.
When he was 21, he had just turned 21, he came home and said, "I'm ready to do something different." So I'm a clinical psychologist, so I know the intake process for treatment. We got him into detox within 24 hours. He was in a medical detox for 10 days. That medical detox provided him a bed-to-bed transfer to a rehabilitation treatment center that was inpatient. He successfully completed inpatient treatment and was doing outpatient treatment and attending 12-step meetings. And he was back. That boy that I knew was back. He was back for a few months. He had been gifted a mountain bike when he successfully graduated treatment. He left the house on the mountain bike on a Thursday afternoon, October 25th, 2021. I said, like I always did, Bruce, I love you, be careful out there. And that's the last thing I ever said to him.
I was having an appointment with my advisor, and my mom texted me like, hey, I need to talk to you when you get a moment. So I went back to my dorm, and actually the day before I had talked about Bruce with my friend, and I was like, yeah, I think he might die, but I don't want him to. But I know there's a day I might get a call and he's not here anymore. And the next day I got that call, and when I sat down at my desk, and my mom said, Brucey's dead, and I cried out just this heart-wrenching no, so loudly that my roommates came up to see if I was okay. And they said, what's wrong? What can we do? And I was still on the phone with my mom, and I said, I'm coming to the airport now. Just buy me whatever, buy me a ticket. I'm coming to the airport now. And so I hung up, and my roommate, I grabbed my backpack, my school backpack. And I didn't pack anything or my medicine, or I just grabbed my school backpack and my phone and a winter coat. And my roommates drove me to the airport.
His body was recovered by a dog walker behind a Wells Fargo drive-thru and a McDonald's drive-thru, about 30 yards from the drive-thru. He was not able to call out for help. I found out later that it was 100% fentanyl that he received that day, somehow dropped dead where he stood and couldn't call out for help.
We found out from a very nice policeman who said, this is my third call today on a fentanyl death. And it was 1 p.m. And he said, this is, he was, my age, so it wasn't his first rodeo as a policeman. And he said, I don't know what's going on, but this is unbelievably not okay. This is not what I signed up for as a policeman. This isn't what I know. It's a different situation. He said, I can't handle this much longer. So he was just walking up a path that we knew he chose to live out of doors because he was using, and he didn't want to upset Sandy and his grandparents, who we always had open door policy for him. He just dropped dead in the middle of the path. And a dog walker found him a couple days later. And I know that people in that community of drug users must have seen him because his people lived up there. So I'm sure people had gone past him, but this dog walker found him on a Thursday.
After he died, I think I just was underwater for about 2 months, like any parent would be with the loss of a child. Then we got the toxicology report back. And the toxicology report said 100% fentanyl. I did not see that coming. In any shape or form did I see that coming. That a little 22-year-old boy in Anchorage, Alaska could get 100% fentanyl. So I started learning about fentanyl. learning how dangerous it is and how little it takes to kill someone. And it just, somehow if it had been alcohol or some other drug that had killed him, I would have mourned with the loss of my child, but I wouldn't have become what I've become now. Something about the fentanyl, just, I couldn't sit with it. I couldn't. And I told my family I was going to take a run at fentanyl. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. I just said I'm going to take a run at it. And I started contacting law enforcement, predominantly law enforcement, saying what's going on with fentanyl in Alaska. Why is it here? How is it here? How did it kill my child? And I ran across HIDA, the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area federal program, and the director of HIDA in Alaska sat with me and taught me about fentanyl in Alaska and what was happening here. And he and I started working together after that. We did lots of news interviews. Some statistics came out about Alaska that spring in 2022, that Alaska was #1 in the nation for the increase in illicit drug deaths, predominantly due to fentanyl. #1 in the nation per capita increase. That came out just kind of as a statistic. This is what's happened in Alaska. And I called the news and said, I can put a face to that. And they came over and interviewed me, and that's really what started. Is I started talking about Bruce, started telling his story, not as a number, but as a face. This is the boy that died, that was one of those numbers that made Alaska #1 in the nation.
It's just horrifying. And, you don't really know just how it reaches other people until you have a loss yourself. Then you start finding out, your friend's son or your friend's this or that, or somebody bought a Xanax pill online. Next thing you know, they're dead in their room. All this hope and all this promise. And Bruce had that hope and promise and that glimpse into who he could be. And it was taken away. It's a loss that's incalculable for our family, but then across all the other families in the U.S. and up here in Alaska. Sandy lost her son. We lost our nephew. My daughter's lost their cousin who they grew up with, But yeah, waves of loss. And we're continuing to see it because we've met, other survivors, other families. I mean, it's insidious. One pill, they're dead. I mean, it's that horrifying. And I'm glad that education, and I'm glad that these films are being made to tell these stories, get people to understand this is real and it's at your door.
So keeping him with me, keep telling his story somehow keeps him with me. I don't know why that works for me. Everybody grieves in their own way. This is what grief has done to me. I didn't create it. I didn't make it happen. It just keeps happening. I learn things. I talk about it. I go to places. People tell me what's happened to their family because of fentanyl, and I just keep going and going and going. And I'm going to Washington, D.C. to talk about Bruce again. I think for me, if I didn't do this, Bruce would just be dead, and that's not okay with me. There's got to be some kind of point to him being gone. I just have to keep going and keep telling people what happened to this young man that had plans for his life.
I think the lesson for everybody else out there is it could be you. It could be your son, it could be your daughter, it could be your nephew, it could be your neighbor. And it's reaching so many different people. Well-educated kids that are college bound are found dead in their rooms. That or their dorms. I mean, right? It's not just a street drug. It's throughout the whole thing, the whole gamut of our society. That's what's scary about it. Unlike other drug epidemics, maybe the cocaine of the 80s or the, heroin of the 70s or the pot or the different things like that. This thing gets in, it kills. There is no warning. It's horrifying.
Choose to love. Choose to love. We had Brucey's funeral at an AA facility, and there were people there from rehab. And a young man around Brucey's age said, I can't believe all the people that are here that are still loving Brucey. My family's deleted me. So he's still Brucey, and it's not his fault these drugs are out there. He's still our Brucey, and he knows to the very last minute that he was loved 100%.
Just love them. Love them so much, because you don't know when you're not going to see them again.
Law enforcement works very, very hard. I know many people in law enforcement now, and they're working very, very hard to interdict illicit fentanyl and illicit drugs all around the country. There are lots of treatment centers starting all over the country to help people that are able to live through fentanyl. I often say fentanyl will kill you before you have the chance to recover. So yes, treatment is important, but fentanyl will kill you before you have the chance to recover. It killed my child before he had the chance to recover from the substance abuse disorder that he had. If it can happen to him, it can happen to anyone. And I know so many parents that have the same or a similar story to mine, that how is it possible that it's happening to our children? Not just my child, but hundreds of thousands of children around the country that were just being kids. They made a mistake. Bruce made a mistake. That's all it was. That's what children are supposed to learn from. They're supposed to be able to learn from their mistakes. They shouldn't have to die from them. But they are dying. All around the country, not just Alaska. Alaska is number one again in the nation for the third year out of 4 years. Alaska is number one again. But it's not just here. It's everywhere, every day. So even though it's getting worse, not better, those of us that do the work that I do, other parents, we just keep going. We just have to keep going, because our children are dead. But there are other parents out there that we don't want them to feel what we feel. We don't want them to go through what we're going through. And the only way we know how to do that is to talk about our children. For me to talk about Bruce. So that's where I can help. That's where Bruce's story can help. That's what other parents' stories can help. This is not something you can wait to help your child with. This is something we have to teach our children not to ever put themselves in the position of contacting something that may have fentanyl in it. Zero tolerance for illicit drugs. You can never die from an illicit drug if you never try an illicit drug. That's the solution for me. We can't arrest our way out of it. We can't treat our way out of it, but we can reduce demand so that people don't die. It's 100% preventable.